there was a reason why I started Trying Day, because, well, I was writing a book and nobody was going to publish it. And the most wildest and courageous publisher out there I knew of even told me, he says he didn't think he was ready to take on Skull and Bones. So I says, well, I've got to start thinking about doing it myself. And then Daniel Hopsicker came along, and I helped him work with Barry and the boys, and he says nobody's going to publish it. So I says, well, I've got a computer on my desk. They tell me I can publish a book. Let's come and do it. So that's what started me doing publishing. We're going to call this The Ignored, because these books that I have published by Jim Norman, Nick Bryant, Daniel Hopsicker, Whitney Webb are books that have a big effect on people when they read them, okay, but they are completely ignored by the mainstream press. Whitney was supposed to be on here. I got an email from Ed, who was her main researcher for Volume 1.
I was a mainstream reporter. I was working at Forbes magazine. After doing some other investigative stories, I ended up bumping into the infamous Promise software story, which I think never really been properly, completely explained. But anyway, that got me going into the netherworld of intelligence activities. This was in the mid-90s. Somebody had actually compiled a list of all of the internet references, press releases, and everything from Systematics, and put them together in one spot on the internet where you could find it. And I stumbled onto it. The person who did that was J. Orland Graby, who was a former Wharton Business School professor, computer genius. At one point, I think he worked somehow with the NSA. Other sources Orland had fed Orland a whole bunch of amazing background stuff about corruption in the government, the Vince Foster story, money laundering, all this. But pretty soon we ran into a brick wall. The powers that be really tried to put the kibosh on this whole thing.
And then I came across a cult called the Finders. 2 of the Finders had been busted in Florida with 6 children, and they were charged with multiple counts of child abuse. All of a sudden, the case was quashed. And the last lines of that U.S. Customs report, the CIA has said that this is an internal investigation. No further action will be taken. I started to look for instances of that, and that led me to Omaha, Nebraska, where there was a similar incident where the FBI had covered up child trafficking, which, and actually local police had covered up child trafficking, and the Department of Justice had covered up child trafficking. Child trafficking and molestation is probably the most heinous crime. I think it's the most heinous crime someone can possibly commit. And I could not get my mind around that our government or some malignant corner of it, of our intelligence, is aiding and abetting child trafficking.